In this lesson, we're going to break apart All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix. This solo, and sort of the batch of solos, it's kind of like a bunch of mini lead passages, are just some of my favorite examples of Jimi's melodic lead playing. His string bending, and just the story he tells with his lead guitar, pretty incredible with this song. So I want to break down each part by part. So this song's pretty easy to play. There are only 3 chords. It's in the key of C minor, and it just includes C minor, B flat, and A flat. And it just kind of goes back between C minor Okay, so there's only 3 chords: C minor, B flat, A flat, B flat, C minor, and it all just starts over. So the trick to playing this song, if you're going to play it with your band or friends, is to just play it very dynamically. If you can make the quiet parts quiet and the loud parts loud, that's going to help really make it an interesting song with just a few chords for a long time, okay? So that lead passage now, we're in the key of C minor, and I love this. He's sliding up into the 12th fret on the G string, like this. So this is kind of like a G minor over C lick, right? It's kind of playing like the 5 chord over the 1 chord. But the main thing is this lyrical bend. Then he releases that. And comes down to sort of our like C minor box pentatonic zone out of the 8th fret. So that's a little bit of a position shift right there. A little faster, you start to hear the phrasing, it getting down, if you're not used to changing positions fast, this can be a little bit tough, but this is really important to get you out of thinking of box positions. If you can really play like this, then you're not thinking about, well, which box am I in? You're thinking more about just melodically, how am I playing? What sound do I want to get? That's the biggest thing that I want you to get from this solo, is breaking out of any box positions, okay? So again, here's what we have so far in this first lick. Now he slides up into the root on the D string, 4th string, 10th fret, and this sort of lick is so cool. Just the run up into it from below helps give it this sort of, it helps sort of launch the lick off. Here's what I mean. So once more. So this kind of run up from the bottom, again, just like I said, it's another one of these, we're not going to just stay anchored right here. This is like the opposite of that sort of just, we're going to move around a lot. And that's the sound of the solo. It's very free flowing, and there's a lot of movement. So once again, this lick goes like this. That little hammer-on the B string is 8 to 10. And then he bends up to the root on the B string from 11 to 13. This is a great time to work on the accuracy and the pitch of your bends. So you don't want to go like this. And be fishing for your note. We really want to hear this. Okay, so make sure that you're bending in pitch. In this case, my Strat has 5 springs on the back. My bridge is not floating at all. My bridge is set on the back of the guitar. So if I bend like this, all the other strings stay put. I have a floating bridge strat, and I have to, it feels a little bit different because when you bend up on that, the other pitches depress, right? So in this case, I'm playing accordingly, but I'm just bringing this up because you might have a floating bridge on your strat. You're going to have to bend according to what your setup is, okay? If you have a stop tail piece, a Gibson guitar, obviously you're not going to have the floating bridge issues that someone playing a strat has. But this is just something to be aware of, given whatever your guitar is set up to do. All right, now the second lead passage that Jimi has in this song starts out with these unison bends, and these are in the 8th fret position. So this first one goes like this. I'll play the whole part, and then we'll break it down part by part. Okay, so this is, again, just minor pentatonic vocabulary up the wazoo. Really nice to have all these phrases and licks in your back pocket. It starts out a little bit more positionally based here, and we do this. Now that sounds a lot like Manic Depression, right? In Manic Depression, Jimi starts his solo out with this unison bend. Okay, so this is kind of that sound, right? And it's a little bit different when you bend unison bend from the B to the E. To when you do a unison bend from the G string up to the B note, right? That's like a slightly different thing. So just right there, those are two great techniques to practice. This one. And then this one. Now after holding that bend, which is really cool, this is a subtle part of the solo I love, he really holds that note and then releases the bend, and it goes into this next sort of cascading part where he goes up to the high bend that he gets to. So that sounds like this. Okay, so let me get you through that part. Once we release this bend, we come down to the root, right here on the 10th fret of the 4th string. Now we're going to slide. We're going to get out of this position and slide up into kind of the next zone, but we're going to do a similar bend that we did in the intro. And again, the vibrato on all of these notes, if you have kind of crummy vibrato, that is just not what we want to hear, okay? This is not so shred-tastic that it's super difficult to get the details correct. That's what this is about. If you want to go learn how to play a gazillion notes per second, that's on some other YouTube video somewhere else. This is about the details and the very, very fine little work that goes into string bending, playing your notes in pitch, all that sort of stuff, right? So anyway, here we go. We're going back, this sort of similar to the intro lick. After that, he bends up one more note to the minor third. That's a great little string bending exercise right there. The first part. Ending with some first finger flexes, right? Some FFFs. Now that first finger bend, that's a whole step. Part of what I think about it that helps me get through it, because it's definitely kind of tough. It's not the hardest thing, but if you just do it really quickly, Then this whole second phrase is ended with this kind of rapid fire, similar to the last time where we do this like. So he's going to slide up into the 10th fret of the D string. Then he's playing some classic rock and roll guitar vocabulary. And something I notice about this is that he's not just, I don't know, listen to how he's picking the notes. Each one's a little bit staccato at first. It's kind of like. Then he runs through it a little bit more legato. So this whole last part of the lick sounds like this again. Let me play this whole second part of the solo beginning to end once more. All right, our third solo in the tune starts out with this really cool octave thing. And so Jimmy is starting here at the 8th fret with the index finger on the G string, and then high E is at the 11th fret with your pinky. And it's this like. It doesn't sound like he's really doing octaves on all three notes. Like. Sounds a little more like it's just on that first note to me. Then he does another unison bend. Okay, so again, I just love this. It's so melodic, so memorable. It's not wanky, it's not just notey and like it's not some firework display of just here's a bunch of notes. It's super duper, like the weight of every single note is so heavy, it really matters. Again, let's go through this part by part. After this unison bend, now Jimmy releases that bend. He goes like this. It's kind of a similar arc of each phrase. There's a lot of similarity between each part here, okay? He goes like this. So that ascension from the C here up to the high G is awesome. I love that. It's the same thing, swooping in. He's sliding into that C. And instead of just starting on the C, it's basically playing a little pickup to your line. And it really helps. Instead of just going, it's like this. Just that combined with string, moving around and position shifting, it has this kind of like moving feeling the entire time. There's definitely motion, and that is important. So again, from that low C up to the high G, we go like this. So this is making probably the most sort of melodic example of our most classic rock and roll lick, this. But the way he phrases it, it's not just like, right? It's like, after you're bending that high F to the high G, that's one of the parts that I'd work on the very most, just making sure that these bends are in tune. again, the similarity between each part is really nice because I think if you're trying to take your own solo on this, and if you've learned these licks really specifically, you can see that just playing around with them, you can hopefully put your own sort of fingerprint on this and do it a way that's unique to you by sort of blending the lines of what Jimmy's playing and something that you might have learned here from these licks and something that you do anyway, right? So that sort of specificity in your bends, really being able to have control over it and being able to tell the story very, very specifically. That's, I think, the most important part of just sounding like you and sounding really good. I think playing one note really well is better than playing a bunch really poorly. So I would just slowly go through each one of these passages until you get them down and then start to link them together. It's kind of nice because if you learn one, you get a little break. When Jimmy starts singing, there's a verse and you can just kind of hang out, collect yourself, and then play the next part. That's what I would do if I was trying to learn this at home to master the solo the best that I could. Okay, so then following that third solo break, there's this really cool lap steel slide part that comes in. I'm kind of skipping over that because it's just played on a different instrument. It's a pretty simple melody to pick up on. I'd encourage you to try to learn it yourself and maybe adapt it to guitar. But now we're going to skip ahead to the wah lead guitar that comes in. And he does this part that goes like this. He's starting with these octaves again, and he goes from the third up to the flat 7. Sounds like this. Right? One more time. So this really tests your muting. And when you're doing these octaves, especially Jimmy, you're always muting what you're not playing. He's not just very carefully only hitting the strings he's fretting. He's got it set up so that he can hit all 6 strings, and he's muting everything that he doesn't want to hear. So in this case, I'm just kind of taking care of it, a lot of it with my middle finger. Right? Like that. I know Jimmy has his thumb over the neck a lot, like kind of most of the time it's draped over. He had huge hands, so that's a big part of it. But to get that Jimmy feel, that's the whole thing. Is like you're not super precise with your right hand a lot of the time. It's more like you're just hitting as much as you can, and your left hand kind of cleans up, what you don't want to hear. So then after that wah part that goes up to the flat 7, he comes down and he does these just very rhythmically, very pentatonic box runs that go like this. So as soon as the wah pedal comes on, this kind of reminds me of like early Eric Clapton, like White Room. The wah pedal is this totally new sound, and I feel like it's just a vibe thing, right? The notes here are less specific. It's more of like, oh man, the wah is this amazing new sound, and so I feel like this part is very cool, but the notes are sort of less specifically like in our DNA of we know it going that way every time, right? This part's a little bit less specific, but it definitely gives us a good workout with the wah. And now we get back at the very end, we do this cool. And with these unison bends, that's a great time to get some expression out of the wah. If you cock the wah back all the way when you start a bend, and then you really work on the range that the wah gives you, you can make it vocal. Let me demonstrate that right here. So that's tough, and that just takes some time and just work on, bending. Sometimes it's hard for people to do 2 things at once. Like working the wah gets all their attention and then they can't bend on pitch or anything. So I'd say just try these licks slowly, make sure that everything is sounding good, and when you add something like the wah, don't get too weirded out if it takes a minute to feel comfortable. That's definitely normal. Now he does this very cool little thing that just follows the chord progression pretty much. It sounds like it's just on the top 2 strings to me. You could fill out the chord a little bit more if you want. But honestly, if you're playing this song with a band and there's a mix, like there's a drummer and bass player, you don't really need to play more than 2 notes. It sounds really great just to play these two. And it's a part that goes like this. Okay, so this is super fun. Just double stops on the high E and B, starting at the 8th fret. Okay, and you're always hammering on 2 frets higher. So like at the 8th fret, we're going to hammer on to the 10th fret. 6th fret, hammer on at 8. So that part's cool, kind of just a different type of lead playing, right? It's more of like a part. And then some percussive strumming, like... Then he ends this whole thing by going like this. He does these unison bends that go from the root up to the 5th, and they sound like this. Then that takes us to one last vocal verse, and Jimmy wraps up the whole thing with this climactic unison bend, just sort of out part that ends up going from right here to up here. And he does this by going like this. That's the end of the song. You can see this is just like, there's not much to it. This goes back to what I was saying with, you don't need to play a billion notes for it to be really impactful, right? This just like really digging in. Holding that bent note at the end, having anything on it even. That's the name of the game. That's what we're working on here, okay? That concludes, and then if you know the record really well, you know that that goes into a song that we're definitely going to do a video on soon. That is Voodoo Child. That back-to-back combo is pretty incredible when you hear that fade out into Voodoo Child. So that's it for the Along the Watchtower video. I hope you learned a ton from all of these licks. Jimmy's got so much guitar technique here on full display for us. I'd recommend just spending a lot of time learning this part by part. Just slow it down. And remember, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of each note that you play. So getting to learn it note for note is great, but ultimately you just want to sound better playing like you. So hopefully some of this rubs off on your playing. And hey, if you haven't yet already, please subscribe to the channel. We're putting videos like this out all the time. So I'll catch you in the next one.